Hey everyone, I wanted to talk today about color and how we can modify and manipulate color and some of the problems that can come with color, especially with flowers. All right, so when I look at this image, this is straight out of the camera. This is a JPEG. I was shooting with the A7R4, which has a lot of megapixels, so it's a pretty big file, and so occasionally I will shoot JPEG, especially if it's not a super challenging situation. And 90 millimeters, ISO 1250, shutter speed 1/640th of a second at f3.5. And I was really going for just having this part in focus. I wanted this to be really sharp and everything else to be sort of soft. So that was the reason for the aperture. Now, the first thing that I look at it, I don't really love the colors with this one. Now, this is the Autumn Leaves internal color style or creative style for Sony. And I'm not really a fan of how it looks with this poppy because if I'm being honest, I'm not really a fan of the colors of poppies. I love the shape and the look, but if this was a white flower, I would like it infinitely better. Orange is hard for me. I'm just going to remove a little spot over here with the healing tool. And then I need to think about, what do I want to do with this? Number one, I think I need the greens to be diminished because they are so bright. And I feel like instead of being a frame, they're kind of taking the attention away from the flower itself because it's so bright. So I'm going to go down to green and desaturate that just a little bit. Not a lot. I just want to minimize it just a touch. And maybe lower the luminance a little bit because that's going to make it more like a vignette. Darkening it through luminance also helps, but do be careful around the edges here because we start to see some, let me reset it. You can start to see some lines being created around here. So as I lower the luminance, you can see that there's almost this orange, yellow, green, or a dark green, and then a regular green or a lighter green on the other side. You start to get this line around it. So you want to be careful. You can only go so far as to not start to disturb the pixels too much when you're working with a JPEG. That happens also with RAW though, sometimes too as well. There is only so far you can move a file in any case. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to do is to adjust the color of the flower itself. And when we look at the flower itself, it has pink right here and orange. And so let's go into the colors that may be stemming from. So let's try red. If I lower the hue slider, we see that this changes it to like a magenta fuchsia type color, which is pretty intense, but we also see things are starting to block up. And what I mean by that is we're losing data. It looks like somebody took a magic marker and just scrubbed it on there, and that's not really that awesome. So we're going to pull that back. When I go over to orange, here I can change the hue to more of a fuchsia and over to a yellow. And you see that works actually a lot better because there is apparently a lot of orange in this one. That means it's an orange poppy, so that would make sense. Notice how when I move over to the right, it makes the flower yellow, which surprisingly works really well. We don't have a lot of data loss in here, and the color actually looks pretty good. You know, we can lower the saturation a bit, and that would be a very believable color. As far as, shifting the flower goes. But when we move it over to the left, we have a lot of trouble. Now look, we get this color banding around the outside, and then we get blocked up color. And this is what I mean by blocked up color. You see areas where it's just incredibly thick with color and it doesn't look attractive. We lose the detail in the petal area. When I bring it back, I mean, yes, this is out of focus. So yes, there's not going to be a lot of detail, but it's smooth. It looks pleasing straight out of the camera. But as I move this over, you start to see that we have these areas that are really, really strange looking. And again, it's a JPEG, but the same thing can happen with a RAW. It just depends. So maybe moving it subtly would be better. So back to the orange, I think, lowering the saturation a little bit on this. And let's go back to the green. And I would like to pull out some of the saturation more on here as well. I want this to be the focal point. So I'm going to take my brush, grab my texture tool, go over and then start to apply this to the interior of the poppy. And it's quite green. I'm seeing it's quite green. So I might go up here to temperature and tint and add a little bit of magenta to it, just a touch. Maybe add some, oops, now see I've made it too big. You can see how it's starting to spill out the side there. It actually isn't too bad. But you notice also how temperature will change the exposure. It's getting quite bright around the periphery here because of the temperature adjustment. I often tell people that it's easier to shoot warmer and cool it off than to shoot cooler and warm it up, because you're going to move that histogram over to the right a little bit when you add warmth, which can be problematic. So I'm going to go over here to the eraser tool, make that a little bit bigger, and just sort of erase around where it's spilling over. I can turn on the mask here so I can see what's going on as I erase. And like that. Take off the mask. Like that, and then go back to my brush. Yeah, so this is hard. I'm not really liking a lot of this. I feel like it's just a personal preference, honestly. The color palette here is not something that I love. I love the idea of poppies, but I'm not a fan of their color as far as my personal aesthetic goes. So I'm going to bring that back. So what can a person do? What can you do to adjust the color? Well, we could use textures. We could bring this into an app and just change the whole color palette. We could go up here to our profile section and maybe play with some profiles. The monochrome actually looks really quite beautiful in black and white here. I like how the shape is. So that's something to think about. I could also go to a more dim, desaturated type profile. I have some of them in here that I've created myself, and then some that are supplied from Lightroom. This one here is called Spring Wind, and it was made by myself, and I like this one, but it does have this interesting line there, which can be problematic. You can see that it affects the background more than anything. Red Velvet is another one. These are ones that I created from LUTs or profiles I created myself. So, this is a possibility. Monochrome is really pretty. I don't mind this one either, and that's the original. So let's go into just the Lightroom ones. Maybe a Lightroom Artistic, which are shipped with Lightroom. I like this one okay. This is Artistic 2. And, you can just play along with that. Artistic 2, if I bring this over. It does have a bit of a matte finish to it a little bit. It's hard to tell. Let's go into Modern. Modern 3 has been a historic favorite of mine. And Modern 5 is very desaturated. The one thing that I don't like about Lightroom is that they give you the options of these LUTs or profiles, but they do not give you the option to mask them or apply them to localized areas or take them off, which I find frustrating at times. So I think what I'm going to do is go up to the Modern section here. And there was one that I think was working fairly well. That one's kind of matte finish. I'm not a fan of that. Modern 3. Or should we go with black and white? I don't know. What do you think? Of course, it's personal preference. That's fairly, understood that, it's an art form, and you either are trying to convey absolute reality or go in there and convey something that you find beautiful. I have other painterly profiles here that I've created that are a little bit more subdued that I could look at too. And I just scroll through to see more or less what the background is looking like. And also if it creates this weird line around the outside perimeter. See, I like that one a lot, but then again, we get this weird line. And I know that some people will say, well, you should shoot raw. And the truth is this does, I know I've mentioned it before, but it does happen with raw as well. And I think it's just the way that adjacent colors behave with each other. Yeah. I guess I'm just going to go back to the regular color and then go back to my HSL section or color mixer. And I'm going to desaturate, or let's change the hue maybe of the green. We'll go warmer with it, lower the saturation on it to just diminish that. And maybe go into orange and just diminish that a little bit too. I don't know. I think what I need with this is more of a painterly process because it's just not feeling right to me. Yeah, I'm not liking it. Well, let's try a black and white. When in doubt, go black and white, especially when color is giving you issues. Sometimes seeing just the shapes and appreciating that for what it is and focusing on that can be really important. So what I'm going to do here is go down to, let's see, black and white mix. We know we have yellow, so I'm going to lower that. And I don't like that. See how we get that really intense line there? You got to be careful about that. That's where masking would be super handy in Lightroom. But I can lower the green a little bit to make it pop. And then I'm going to go into dehaze, which is something I like to add with black and whites as well. We start to get that line too. So we have to bring that back. But maybe let's do it locally. Let's go dehaze and kind of add it to the interior here. And then on top of that, I'm going to push the whites, which will help make this pop along here. Just kind of wherever the light would hit. Make it a little bit brighter. And this is adding a nice three-dimensional feel to it. Wherever the light is hitting the petal, that's where I'm hitting with this. And yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to take it off right here though, because we're getting that line again. Yeah, I actually like that a lot better. Do you see how it makes the little stamens and the pollen and everything just really pop? All right, so then I'm going to go out of this and go back into it, and I'm going to actually lower clarity and lower contrast and lower dehaze, and I'm going to kind of put it along the edge here. Whoops, maybe not the dehaze. I'm trying to see if I can soften that edge that I'm not a fan of how it's looking right there. So I'm trying to lower sharpness. Let's look at our mask. Right there, see what's going on. Lower the contrast a little bit. Yeah, let me start over. Let me just leave the mask on and then start to pull these things off. Lower the contrast. I think lowering the contrast just helps enough. The edge is there because I used quite a bit aggressive adjustment when it came to the black and white mix here. Well, actually, it's not too bad. But it's the green luminance that's causing that problem there. Yeah, and I'm liking that. So let's go back up to regular contrast. And I like that as well. Let's go to highlights and push those and see what happens. And whites and see what happens. Keeping an eye on the histogram to see if anything's blowing. A little bit is blowing. There we go. Yeah, and a little bit of red clipping. That warning that you see in Lightroom often is not a problem because it usually, it's a little bit more aggressive as far as showing you the issues with it. Sometimes things print absolutely fine with a little bit of the blown. You just have to kind of zoom in and check. And this is sort of an out of focus area, which tends to be smoother, which reflects the light more in the camera. All right, now I'm going to add a vignette. So I'm going to go exposure lowered, and I'm going to do kind of a soft vignette, kind of custom here, not a circle. I like irregular vignettes because they don't draw attention to themselves quite so much. Whoops, that one was like, whoops, I did not want to do that. It's left over. Whoa. Undo, undo, undo. There we go. All right. Let me see here. Yeah. I think it's one of these is a problem. Not that one. Maybe this one. I think it's that one that's being problematic to me. Yeah, I'm just tweaking. When I start to do too many things at one time, I lose track of where it all went. Let's zoom in. That is looking nice and sharp. Let me look at it full screen. Okay, I think that looks good. I much prefer this in black and white. It's very dynamic. My histogram is nice and stretched. Yep. I like that a lot. And maybe lower the highlights just a touch right here and right there. I know I said it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to see if that would help. Lovely. I like that a lot. All right. Thank you for joining me for this edit. I just wanted you to see how dealing with color sometimes can be really frustrating, especially if you're shooting with JPEG, and also how sometimes saving it as a black and white may be a better option. So you might want to give that a try if you're struggling with colors that don't seem to harmonize with your vision. All right. Thank you. See you in the next video.